Hi, how you doing? We're gonna we're gonna cover chapter 10 today, and module 10. Excuse me. You have quite a few supplemental videos available to you down below. So I'm gonna kind of give you an overview today. We're gonna discuss some of the key topics real quick, and then I want to take you through a test drive of the solution, and then when you actually tackle those particular areas, you use those supplemental videos. Deb Wolf gave me permission to use them, and they're they're detailed. So let's talk about the objectives for this particular module. And one of them is about macros and macro designer. And what is a macro? Well, a macro is essentially the ability for you to directly get access to the runtime of the the database or accesses program. Essentially, you're working within the graphical user interface, and they gave you the ability to write code and create forms, and therefore you then had executable privileges, or you have executable privileges when you create those macros, which are essentially code. It's code. You're writing code, and that's also its detriment, because macros are kind of why we have this. And it's the dreaded, it drives me insane. Every time I load up Access, it tells me something about some security thing. And it's like, it's so annoying. Uh, it's really annoying. No, it's really, really annoying. But it's needed, because if somebody were to email you an ACCDB file, such as the one I'm looking at right here, and they wrote in some code, because they give you executable privileges within that program, they wrote if they wrote some code that automatically showed the navigation form when it loads up, that automatically ran this routine, they could put in that routine code that would, rat your machine out. It's kind of a new term, but basically hack your machine, make it a slave, doing Bitcoin mining or something like that. But that's where macros are a problem when it comes to the ACCDB files. Is they're a huge security hole in Microsoft Access. However, because this program is so well loved and liked, what they did to fix the issue is you're able to open up the file, but it does not run anything. And that's where you click the button enable saving, enable this. That's when the process is given over to the background, where you might have some code that's going to run, like opening the navigation window automatically when you bring up the database. That's one task that you're going to be given. And that's exactly how that particular task is exactly how people get their machines ratted, or broken into, made a slave. All kinds of different bad things will be in the ACCDB file that you might have inadvertently downloaded because you thought it was from a coworker, and you open it up and it runs automatically, and you can't determine, because as soon as you open it up and you look at it, you will know that it's bad, and then get away from it. So that those little pop-ups that they have, hey, enable saving, do this, do that. Let's see if it pops up here for us. Yeah, okay. So right here, active content blocked. Review your trust center. So what they're doing is they're blocking the ability for that automated code to run. And up here, you say blocked macros from running because the source of the file is untrusted. So essentially, it gives you the ability to open up and look at the file before running macros, before the macros actually get started. And that's where the security comes in and why it's so annoying. But it'll give you that glimpse, oh, I got phished, I got had, before it runs the macro and rats your machine. And then you can make a choice. Essentially, well, your first choice is downloading and opening it in the first place and getting phished. That's your first choice. But this is definitely a program that you want to be leery getting in an email always. Or program an ACCDB file. Excuse me. So that's macros. And you're going to be given some instructions on going through those. Applying different things. Opening when the form opens, do this particular instruction. And you can also tie macros to SQL statements, and you can tie things like list boxes and stuff like that to a particular SQL statement. So let's talk about SQL statements real quick, because this is kind of your introduction to SQL statements, and we'll nail into them a little bit and give you kind of an overview. I started out by talking this quarter by talking about SQL statements, and what is a SQL statement. So let's review that real quick. Oh no, he's going on the whiteboard. Uh-oh. Yeah, let's not get this review out. All right, so remember that we talked about, well, we didn't go into detail, but you've got a server here, and this is a database server. I'm probably misspelling server. Yeah, I am. Yeah. Okay, so this is your server, and it's the one that executes. It actually does it. It takes care of the task of putting information into the database, and it acts on a port, and it's always listening. So it's always listening. So it listens. It listens. What does it listen for? It listens for a SQL statement to come in and tell it what to do. So it's it's what we call a service. So it's actually a program on the server that we call a service, and it has a particular port on that computer that that's running the service, and we call that a database server. So this is what we call the database server right here. That's listening to a particular TCP/IP port for instructions. And so over here we have a whole nother program. And this could be any kind of program. It could be access, but it's some kind of executable that uses a language. And yeah, I know my scribbles are getting really bad. Oh my goodness, this is ridiculous. I'm getting a new whiteboard thing. Yeah, it's just happening soon. Program. It's just another executable. So this is an executable listening. It's a program listening for instructions. And we have another program over here, and it could be a website. It could be a website using, PHP. It could be a Java program. It could be any kind of program. It could be access forms. Access forms. And all access is doing is creating that SQL statement again, because the server is responsible for protecting the data, holding the data, giving you the data, storing the data, all that stuff, so that these databases and these data warehouses are built already with as many speed, basically everything's refined. All the optimization that is mostly possible is implemented by the SQL servers, or any kind of web database server. And the better the service, the better the server, the more that they charge, for clients and whatever. But this is where you have the SQL language. It's the in between. It goes in and screw it. This thing is horrible. Let me put a box. Okay, yeah, here we go. Let's just put in. There we go. Okay, so this is the SQL statement. And a SQL statement is that instruction. And so the SQL statement is formed from the program. It's formed from or inside of this program. It's sent to the server that's listening for that statement, and then the server will either insert data that's sent from the program over here, or it will return data that's requested from the program over here. And that's SQL. And so you're going to have an introduction to it, because in ensuing classes that you have, you're going to be more on, instead of doing the front end, we call this the front end of the database, program, web, Java, access, all that stuff over here, we call the front end. This is the front end. Then all the stuff that is the program that's listening, that's our back end service, or servers, or data service, essentially. This is what all computers are for, is for data, to hold data. That's and not only hold data, but once they get it, they process it. I mean, you're looking at a video screen right now where each pixel is calculated with a red, green, blue value and a position and everything. And okay, I'm going off the bridge there. Let's bring it back, get away from the scribbles. Let's go in and look at a few things, such as an example of a SQL statement. You can use the select statement, where you select specific data, and here's what needs to be remembered with SQL. You direct columns, you design columns, you request or send rows. If you remember that, it's kind of really simple. Design the columns for the data. What kind of data is it? And then the SQL server will create those tables, and then you can use SQL statements to fill those rows up. And also you can use SQL statements to create a database. You can use SQL statements to create a table. You can use SQL statements to, anything that you need for that data, as long as you're authorized with some kind of validation through the website or the front end, you can then get privileges on that back-end service as a user of that particular machine. And that's all done kind of behind the scenes as the back end. So you got your select statement from where? Well, we want to select from columns. And what do we want to select? Well, we want to select where this column is equal to that column, or this column is equal to that, this other column, or this column is equal to this value. And then we can also, hey, give me the data pre-sorted. Sort the data for me. You know, I only want this data, and I'm going to put it over here. I'm just getting read access. Put it over here in column and rows. So that goes to where design your columns. Fill your rows. Fill or send your fill your rows either from or to the database. Now, one thing that they get into is using a SQL statement for a list box. This is where we're going to dive into a little bit of some just part of the overview. I want to bring up the solution, and then we'll talk about it. Oop, please ignore my email there. It was a flash, I know. But we're gonna delve into the solution for this chapter, and of course, you know, there is quite a few supplemental videos that you have for this particular module. Now I just got to remember where I put it. All right, we're delving into the solution for this chapter to give you guys a little bit of an idea of what it looks like. Hopefully this has the stuff. Oh, there's our little macro checker. We love that. Oh, there's another one. We love that one too. Oh my. Okay. I believe the list box is somewhere in here. Oh, come on. There we go. There's our list box. And I think that's the only list box. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's it right there. All right, let's look at it. Because what you can do is in your forms is you can bind specific you can bind controls like a list box to a column of data using a SQL statement from the database and the tables that you've created. I mean, the database is the file that we refer to the database as the file you're working on when we're talking about access. So within that file, you can build your macros and stuff like that to autofill specific form-based controls, and you use a SQL statement to do it. Okay, so let's go ahead and look into design view. Got it. Okay. All right. Let's look. It looks like for the example of the list box, we're going to actually bind it to a SQL statement. So the SQL statement will be performed as to fill the list box. And the way we do that is just like, you know, your previous learning, that you can bind or you can apply a control's data source using the properties. So you're going to right click on the list box, and you'll have a window that pops up when you right click on it, and you can select form properties. Now here's the problem is mine are hiding from me. So I've got to figure out why. Yeah, oh, it popped up. Okay, be careful with that. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's a turd. All of it's a turd. Sometimes yeah. All right, so we got the data source property that we can go to with the properties of this list box. And we can then say, because remember, we're talking about what is it that you do in design mode? You design columns to be filled by rows. So more of the action is going to be, hey, these are the columns, or this is the column, and give me the rows for that data in that column. And then you can ask for any that associate with it within that same table, or join it with another table and get other data that's applied to it. All kinds of things that you can do with that. Well, you look over here and you see here that you've got a SQL statement. And we can even bring this SQL statement up and play around with it. Uh, it brings up the wizard for the query builder for the SQL statement. Even though what we can do is we could just go over here and say select name. We can change that. We can say select, let's order by name. Let's go into here and say select name. Let's say what table is it coming from? From my sys objects. Oh yeah, they're tying it down at the lower level. So you have to use the wizard for this, but you could just put in the SQL code that you wanted to fill that row. Or there's this, where you can build it with the query builder. You can use a query to fill it that is previously been created. You can select from a query, you can select from a table, and you can do that all with straight native SQL code. And I'll give you an example of that with your what we're talking about here. I went in and I modified this SQL statement so that it selects the email from a query called first volunteers, which exists because queries, the query results are also tables. And so I said, get the, not the name, but the email from first volunteers and order it in descending mode. So what this statement does, and I just typed it in, you can just type it right in. It says, give me the email column from this table, which is a query, and then, sort it in this ascending descending value. And then we get something that will, give us a little bit more customization as well. And you see here that we got the emails now showing in the list box. So you got a lot of options that you can use to show data and build your own executables, mini programs inside of this program. And so that's where the danger lies, is the ability to do that, but it's also this ability that makes it so it's highly advantageous for a small to medium sized business to implement a lot of policies and procedures by just using ACCDB files, because the front end is already matured. They can create the front end in Access, and that's what Access does, is it just gives you the ability to create that front end. Then you use SQL to get the data from the database, and then you fill in the data from that front end. So remember, design, build, create columns, fill rows, and that's pretty much the steps that you always have when you're working with a database. And if you simplify it down to that, no matter what's going on, what craziness that's the code or the statement it is, if you boil it down to that process, it's usually got small enough bytes to be able to get it, some kind of weird SQL statement working, or there's crazy crap that you see out there that you're just like, what was this dude thinking? And it's like, but usually we just like to complain about it, because no matter what, there's so much out there that there's going to be things that we don't like when we see it, as far as the way code is created and stuff like that, SQL statements generated and implemented, etc. Okay, that takes us back to a little bit more on multiple macros, navigation form. I'm gonna let Professor Wolf continue on with this. I wanted to give you a good introduction to, hey, macros. What's good? What's bad about them? What's good? Obvious. You can customize the data in the front end that you're working with. What's bad about them? They're very dangerous as far as keeping your machine, from being ratted out and used as a zombie. There's all sorts of things that can happen if those macros are allowed to propagate uncontrolled, and that's why we get all those annoying warnings when we start. We have to explicitly trust the ACCDB file. Once we're able to view it without the macros running, we can then determine a little bit more if it's safe or not. And that's why annoying pop-ups come in. So, all right, guys, make sure you drop in on those supplemental videos. They're a little bit more detailed on the steps involved for this module. Until next time, thank you.